This guy is talking to his friend, and the friend's phone rings. It's his wife calling him. His friend is quiet for a while, and he says, "Drop dead." He's quiet for a while, and he says, "Drop dead." The man is horrified. So when he hangs up the phone, he says, "What is wrong with you?" He says, you don't understand." He said, "Don't tell me I don't understand. I heard you say it, and you said it twice." He says, "My wife just bought a new dress. She wore it this morning, and she's asking me whether I think it's beautiful or." So I said, "Drop dead." She said, "Is it gorgeous?" "Drop dead." Says, "No, no, really, really, what do you think? Is it gorgeous?" "Drop dead."
Is this the deeper meaning of the first verse in Genesis that it says, quote, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth"? Is that what you're alluding to?
Yeah,
That was the process of kind of creating the meaning, creating the thought, if I may?
right. So the language, of course, is absolutely precise. In the beginning.
There was already a beginning.
Yeah. It didn't begin with God saying, "Let there be." A lot had to happen before that. So before there's speech, there has to be a thought. Before there's thought, there has to be a will. You got to want something. Before you want something, there's got to be a pleasure in it that motivates you. So the Kabbalah basically tries to describe and explain all that happens before God spoke. All the steps, all the stages of development within the non-physical, the metaphysical. So what are angels? What are the many universes? How do you go from an unknowable, indescribable God to a creation? What are the steps? And there are many, many. What does that do for us? In a very real way, when the physical becomes painful and discouraging, maybe even traumatic, to live under the impression that all there is the physical, and the physical is not pleasant. You could get suicidal. If this is all there is, and this is painful, well, then I quit. Having studied a little bit of Kabbalah, you realize this is the final end of a long drama. So even if the physical is not so pleasant, but the spiritual that accompanies it, so we immediately have a whole new appreciation for the concept of it's for the good. It doesn't feel good, but it's for the good. In other words, the physical, visible experience is not pleasant, but there is a good purpose which you cannot see. It is not an object, but behind these painful objects, there is a good purpose. So if purpose means something to you, it becomes very helpful. Tomorrow will definitely be better. Hope, trust, optimism, anticipation of good things. Where's that coming from? During a Holocaust, everything you see is evil. Everything. Oh, but something good will come of it. How do you know that? So there's something in the human spirit that can't accept a fatalistic universe. It's all bad. It'll just get worse until it'll destroy itself. So hang on. Buckle up, you know. We don't want to believe that. We can't believe that. And so we put our trust in things we can't see.
Is that just a coping mechanism, or are you saying it's coming from a deeper inner sense so that there's a purpose to all this?
Right. So without the Kabbalah, we would have to believe that it's wishful thinking and useful, to keep you in a good mood until doomsday, and then it'll be over. But when you learn the Kabbalah, you realize, wow, there's a lot of stuff going on there. It's real. In fact, more real than the physical.
So does the Kabbalah even explain? In other words, if somebody has a deep understanding in Kabbalah, could they appreciate why the bad things are happening, why the challenges, why the pain? Does it reach that point?
Sometimes we don't know exactly why, but we know that there is a why. So if a person is going through a very painful, difficult experience, tragedy, whatever, God forbid, he says, why? Why is this happening? Where does that question come from? And is that just a coping mechanism? Who says there's a why? Life stinks. Yeah, why? What do you mean, why?
That's the way it is. Yeah.
That's all there is. There's life and it stinks. And then you die. Yeah, but why? Why do you assume there's a why? So the way God creates the world, as with any relationship, really, you can talk to your wife and you can tell her whatever it is you have to say, but you can't express everything in words. You also don't want to express everything in words because then you're going to end up spending your whole life talking. So you say something to your wife. What you say, she hears. What you're thinking, she doesn't hear. So it's very easy to say something with all good intentions, actually meaning it as a compliment, and it's taken as a criticism or an insult. So what happened was the language, the words, got away from their meaning. Or the thought that produced those words were not heard. The words were heard, the thought behind them was not heard. So sometimes you get so offended, somebody said something, and you can't believe the guy was so rude and so, and then you ask him, you say, why'd you, he says, what are you talking about?
What I meant.
That's not what I said at all. There's a good example for that. This guy is talking to his friend, and the friend's phone rings. It's his wife calling him. So he only hears one side of the conversation, right? His friend is quiet for a while, and he says, drop dead. He's quiet for a while, and he says, drop dead. Anyway, the man is horrified. So when he hangs up the phone, he says, what is wrong with you? He says, you don't understand. He said, don't tell me I don't understand. I heard you say it, and you said it twice. He says, you didn't understand. He said, tell me what didn't I understand? He says, my wife just bought a new dress. She wore it this morning, and she's asking me whether I think it's beautiful or. So I said, drop dead. She said, is it gorgeous? Drop dead. Said, no, no, really, really, what do you think? Is it gorgeous? Drop dead.
So then my question is, if this is the case, first of all, for thousands of years, it seems like people didn't really fully understand what God, quote unquote, said. Because you're saying the words, I'm quoting you here, the words, they got away from their meaning, right? And then my second question is, why would God say something and be so unclear? In other words, why you're saying without the Kabbalah, we can't know what he thought and what he really meant with those words. Why? Why not just be clear? He gave us the Torah and be clear.
So actually, in the past, when the Kabbalah was kept secret, it was not needed. Either because people did hear the thought behind it, or because they were perfectly content knowing that these are God's words without knowing the thought behind it. They were totally accepting of it. In other words, the trust and the belief that there is a thought behind this, there is a rhyme and reason for all of this happening, well, then that's good enough.